Welcome to Good Chats. I'm your host, Jenny Landon. Today, we're going to talk about reducing the risk of crisis through intentional living. This is something that means a lot to me, and a lot of people ask me, what do you mean by intentional living? And I guess for me, the easiest way to put it is to really try to be in tune with what you're doing throughout the day. What foods are you eating? Who are you spending your time with? What are you watching? What are you reading? All of these things impact both our physical and mental health. And until we can start addressing how we're living, we will not be able to address this crisis that's going on with mental health and the rise in suicide. Today, I want to before we get started, I want to make sure that we thank our sponsors. We couldn't have this show without them. I especially want to thank the Kowalskis in Shoreview, as well as Doug Desert Construction and Evereve in Roseville. I also want to say thank you to this incredible crew here at CTV North Suburbs. Now, on to our show. I want to introduce everyone to my two hosts that I have with me today. I have Theresa Nutt. And she is the co-director of the Integrative Health and Wellbeing Coaching Program at the University of Minnesota, as well as the owner of Your Deeper Calling. She is also, this isn't on here, but it's important to know, is a Style Essence coach, who I had the honor of doing a session with, and it was fantastic. We also have Mike James, who's here, and he is the author and producer of Secrets of a Life Coach audio series. Did I get that right?
You got it right. Thank you.
And he's one of my best friends. So, special guy here.
It's really the only reason why I'm invited back.
So we're here today, and while it can feel like a serious topic, we're also here to have fun and chat just about life. And so before we even get started, I want to ask, as I just shared, what it means to me, intentional living. Theresa, what does intentional living mean to you?
Yeah, I think our definition is very similar, and it strikes me that, around 40, I had a midlife crisis. I'm certain of it in retrospect, and it was kind of like I suddenly realized how many choices I was making about my life based on programming from my childhood, based on things I'd heard from other people about what the right way to live was. And I think now in the last 6 years, I've made a lot of different choices for my life. And so I think it is just being at choice in the things we do, and absolutely the things we eat, ingest in every level. And just for women especially, I'm putting in my plug because I work with women, the ability to actually receive all the gifts of the universe and the world instead of always just giving to depletion.
Yeah.
So that also is part of it to me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike, how about you? What does intentional living mean to you?
So I think it's really, really important, and why I create the stories I create in my life's work is to slow down in life. I believe that stopping is the new moving forward, and we're all just running around crazy fast and super busy and have our versions of self-medicating, whether it's food or liquor or keeping a really tight schedule. Facebook, our
so
phones
toxic,
and electronics that I believe slowing down and just living on purpose and seeing what's underneath all the distractions is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, we all talked ahead of time, and I had a really difficult time coming up with the theme, the topic, because this was so all-encompassing. This episode is airing right before Christmas, and so I knew that I wanted this to be a subject that we were talking about, because really in the last year, I've realized how important it is that we are slowing down. Exactly that. For me, it was about a year ago that things were really taking off for me on projects that I was working on with Growing Out of Darkness, and people were approaching me to work on their projects, and I loved it, and I felt valued, and I felt like I mattered, and so I kept accepting all of these different projects, and what ended up happening is I was going in 10 different directions, going to bed at midnight, getting up at 4:30 in the morning to make sure I had my me time, and just going nonstop. And in January of 2019, I knew that I needed to slow down. I had gotten the flu, and then I got food poisoning like back to back, and I knew I needed to slow down. And at that same time, I received a phone call from my daughter's school, letting me know that she had gone to her social worker and told him that the night before she had attempted suicide. And in that moment of literally laying in bed recovering from food poisoning, I said to him, my husband's on his way to come get her from school, and will you please tell her that I'm going to cut back on work? And he's like, well, I think you should tell her. And I said, no, I need you to help her understand I'm not doing that because of this. I'm cutting back because I realize how much I need to put my focus on my family. And so I knew that I needed to cut back, but I didn't really know how. I didn't know what I was going to step back from. And then 2 weeks later, my mom passed away. And it was as I was sitting in her funeral, and multiple people had gotten up to speak about my mom, and they kept talking about her legacy, and that she had helped all of these different people in our community, and she'd brought all of these exchange students over from so many different countries, and thousands of kids' lives were touched, and how her legacy was going to live on forever. And in that moment, I have one daughter sitting in my arm, and I'm looking at her, and I'm looking at my other daughter sitting next to my brother. And then I look down, and I see one of my other brothers who is struggling immensely. And I look at my sister, who is also struggling. And they have both been living off of my mom and what she could provide them for years. And now my mom is gone. And I'm looking at this family of mine thinking, that's great that my mom did all this incredible stuff for our community and all these other people. But would I have a different family if she had invested half of that time into us? And in that moment, I realized my legacy isn't growing out of darkness. My legacy is my children. And it is the way I live today. And right then, I quit everything. I reached out to all of the projects I was working on, and I explained to them what was going on, and I said, I need to focus on my family right now. And it was hard, because I am a giver. You need help? Put me to work. But I have to say that shift has made a profound impact on the way that my family talks, on the way we interact with one another. And it's work. I mean, it really is work to be dedicated to say, I'm not going to take a phone call once my child gets in the car. And I'll admit, she's here, she knows. There are some days where I have to take a phone call. But 9 times out of 10, once she gets in the car, that is our time, right? I'm picking her up from school, that's us. And so I really felt compelled to share this message and to put an emphasis on, I know it's really easy to say, it's the holidays.
Right.
Let's focus on family. But it shouldn't just be during the holidays. And so I just want to ask each of you, that for me, that was a really important pivotal moment where that intentional living has been something I've been aware of for a long time, but for me to actually implement it really became key. Theresa, when would you say, and what happened in your life that caused intentional living to become so important to you? Well, I guess you said when you're 40. Do you want to go a little bit deeper on that?
I can say more about that. Yeah, I would say that, I realized back to I was living someone else's life, not the one I was designed for. Listen, people, I'm a very creative person. I was the corporate buttoned up, wearing black all the time, getting it all done. Right? Hilarious when you see me now. So,
and those shoes, by the way.
And
super cool.
The hot pink boots, but whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, just really, I think that awakening for me was all about authenticity. And I was not even aware how I was not present for others. I thought I was, I'm just getting all this done and doing all this and really connected to my family. But I think now that I'm more true to myself, I'm much more engaged with the people in my life. And I happen to have 18 nieces and nephews, which are my family and my children, because I can't have them myself. And just spending time with them. We just had Halloween a little while ago, and my siblings and I threw a giant Halloween party, and it's just to bring joy to all of them, to do crazy things that bring us together as siblings and them as children. However, we were informed that our haunted house was predictable, so I'm a little bummed. But other than that, it was a great time to just be with family and make choices about being really present. So
nice. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
How about you, Mike? What has kind of pushed you in the direction of intentional living?
I'm super grateful that so I became certified as a life coach in 2010. In 2011 and 2012, I was really, really fired up with all these ideas that I had and these groups that I was running, and almost too much energy, I think, at the time. And then I started having this blurry vision and started getting really, really tired. And for about 4 months, I was going to different doctors trying to figure out what was happening because I was just exhausted. And it took 5 different doctors and a lot of blood work for me to be told I had mono. And this wasn't, right in college where I'm making out with everybody. I'm like, I am 30 years old. Why do I have mono right now?
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. But what was interesting is that I was forced to lay on the couch and rest all the time because that's all you can do with mono. And in the middle of that rest, I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was what I knew I was supposed to be doing with my life was just sitting out there that I've been running from, that's been waiting for me, that I've been looking for while running from. And what that taught me in that moment is because my life was slowed down on purpose, now every day I sit on a pillow for 20 minutes, and I call it meditation, but it's different every day. Sometimes it's just sitting in silence. Sometimes it's praying. Sometimes I will say things over and over again, but I like to ask a lot of questions to life and see what comes. And that is my vitamin for each day.
Nice.
And super important to get the silence because everything else is loud and busy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what would you guys say, what are some of the consequences of not living in an intentional way?
There are none.
None? No consequences? Just keep going as we are.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I love it. That's a great question because I think that it's so easy, right? The speed of life right now is alarming, and it would just be easy to get swept away, and most people are swept away and not really awake. So I think it is the symptoms that we see in the world are, to me, all stemming from being disconnected from self. And to me, that's the biggest loss, is when you're not connected to yourself, you numb out, you have pain, you don't get help when you need it, you don't reach out. And so that's what I'm seeing. I feel like it's just all about being disconnected from ourselves and what we truly need. And one of the teachers in my life happens to take women out in the 3rd trimester of their life, so 60s and on, out to the land to kind of invite in the gift of the final phase of their life. And she came back from that retreat and shared with me that what most of them heard was the trees saying, you don't even talk to nature anymore. Like, we are just so even disconnected from the very environment that supports us breathing. And it was a game changer to hear that out loud.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually say we are the most disconnected group of people living ever.
It's
right?
a great way to say it.
And I agree. I mean, and I am a social creature. I process out loud. And even for me recently, I was going through a really spontaneous, difficult moment recently. And it was a moment. I didn't understand it, but I just suddenly was crying and was a hot mess. And I'm like, I need to talk to someone. My husband's out of town, and I don't want to burden my kids because I don't even really know what I'm feeling. I want to talk to someone. Who should I call, right? And it's 8 o'clock at night. And I suddenly felt guilty over the idea that I would pick up the phone and call someone, because we are so disconnected. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought twice, right? And now I'm like, oh, I don't want to bother them, Mike, how about you? What do you think? What's a consequence or a couple consequences to not living with intention?
Sure. I always call our station manager, Tim, whenever I'm having a difficult time. No, I'm just kidding. No,
he is pretty great.
He is pretty great, yeah. And I actually had a friend recently that I called. She thanked me at the end for calling her. I was like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And she said that everybody always texts, and she just doesn't get phone calls anymore. So, interesting point. And kind of like you said, the word numb, I think what we're seeing is a result of moving too fast. Lots more manifestations of diseases and lots of things that are popping up, or more of what has been there before, at an alarming rate. And I think if we're moving so fast, we're not feeling our lives. And if we're not feeling our lives and letting out emotions and things that could be blocked, that are only released through tears, sweating, things like that, if those things are blocked, we get more sick. And what do a lot of people do? Just medicate that more, and it keeps compiling.
Yeah.
Versus just talking to nature, huge. And I mean, doesn't the word natural come from nature? And yet we are the most unnatural animal living, and that's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you brought up a good point about just medicating that pain. I often say that just because we talk about mental health doesn't mean we're reducing the stigma, right? We need to change the way we're talking about it, because we've become this culture that it's almost like we're afraid to be sad. We're afraid to feel anything other than a positive emotion, because that must mean we have depression, which means we need to go get on an antidepressant, or we need to go get into therapy. We need to feel our pain.
That's right.
We need to feel it. We need to work through it. I was really fortunate because in that moment when I didn't reach out to anyone, because I thought, who do I reach out to? I clearly have a very, very intense connection with a friend of mine who texted me and said, "Are you okay?" And I looked at it and went, huh?
Just out of nowhere, not even knowing anything?
Yeah, no, he did not know anything. And he just said, "Are you okay?" And I started to tell him, and I was like, no, I don't want to burden him. Right? And so, because I know he's got kids, he's busy too. And so I was like, no, I don't want to burden him. And so I was like, yeah, I'm good. And he wrote back and he said, really? Because I get the feeling that you're not. Like,
amazing.
What's going on? And we ended up, we weren't able to talk because we do both have kids and things were going on, but we were able to trade messages for about 15 minutes, kind of off and on. And then we did talk the next day. He called me in the afternoon the next day once he had time to talk. But even that 15-minute exchange of him recognizing that I needed that, it was so huge. And that moment that I was going through where I'm crying for no reason, suddenly went away. And I have to remind myself that, you know what, maybe I am a burden on my family or my friends. Who cares? Like that connection is what I needed. And it got me through an odd moment. Yes, sir.
And isn't a really important part is even if not to try and think of the reason, like, oh, I must be going through this spell, and oh, I haven't taken this vitamin, or I haven't done this routine in a while, and just feel through it and let it out instead of trying to cling on to a reason so you could change a behavior in the future. If we're already doing that, we've already moved around something and moved away from it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean? And even like my daughter will say, my daughter who had the crisis in January, she said to me one day she was having a bad day, and I kind of went immediately to that, like, well, when was the last time you took your vitamins, and what about this, and what about that, right? And I'm like, I have this list of things that, and she goes, Mom, maybe I just need to have a bad day.
Right.
And I was like, good point, 15-year-old about to turn 16. You got me there. And then I have to just give her space.
Yeah.
Because she's right. Sometimes you just need to have a bad day. Now, what was really interesting is a couple days ago, I was talking to another mental health professional, and she wanted to know more about my story, and I was telling her about my daughter, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry that you live in a constant state of fear over your daughter. And I go, no, I don't. Because that happened in January, and by May, she figured out that I was truly fighting for her to live a life that she loves, because I had stopped all this other stuff that I was doing, and I was 100% focused on her, and I was in a position to do that, And I said, but I don't fear for her life every day. Sometimes I'm scared of her because she's a 15-year-old hormonal, intense child. But, I mean, I'm not afraid that she is going to die from suicide because she had that crisis, back in January. But that's because we've gone through the process of helping her heal. We've been intentional, not just in addressing one thing, but I mean, I made a list. I put it out in our newsletter, and it was this, like 14 things. And even since issuing the newsletter, I'm like, oh, and I should have added this, and I should have added this. Because it's everyday choices that we're making to be connected, to be grounded. Let's shift gears. What would you guys say, what are some of the best benefits of being intentional?
Yeah, I call it living in alignment for myself, and it's just the ease and flow of my life when I'm doing it. When I'm making choices that are out of alignment, for me, my digestive system goes wonky, and then I don't feel good, and then I run out of energy, then I don't sleep. Like, it's this cycle that we create as human beings, and then we feel worse and worse. So for me, I am, life is precious, and I don't want to miss it because my body's recovering or my mind is recovering. And there are some choices I can't avoid, people that I have to be in relationship with that aren't always my best
Mike.
friends. Mike.
I'm right here. I'm in the room.
I couldn't see you. I was blocking you out. I'm just kidding.
I wish I knew it was somebody else.
But I think that as much as possible, the
Yeah.
making choices that really fuel, I call it light me up. The
Yeah.
choices that light me up, that fuel me, because I just meet too many women that are super depleted and energetically look like the walking wounded to me.
Yeah. And I want to say that that's very true. I know you specifically work with a lot of women, but I think it's very true, and Mike, you can speak to this, men.
Yes.
And men who will shut down and not talk about
Right.
this and not really get grounded. And I recently actually went to a conference. It was a marriage conference because my husband and I are very intentional about our marriage. And every year we take a weekend to do a marriage conference. And for everyone who asks me, what's a marriage conference? Go on the website or go on Google and type in marriage conference and a whole list. I wish it was a better list. But I mean, it takes work. It takes effort to find the right one. But we went and heard Mark Gungor talk, and he was saying that for men, they often are not fixers, right? Women naturally are fixers, and they tend to see a situation and want to make it better. And men are kind of like, oh, I'm good. Like, I'll leave it. I don't need to go deeper. I don't need, I'm not going to go further. It's just, it is what it is, But I think that it can be dangerous for men, that they are just as
Absolutely.
equally at risk as women are to get depleted, to not be living in tune with what's really going on, what's in their best interest.
Right.
Mike, what are your thoughts? Like, what are some of the dangers of not living with intention?
I don't know if this could be considered a danger, but
Everything can be considered a danger.
you're right. Let's get dangerous. To me, it seems dangerous at the end of your life if you weren't able to hear what you were meant to do. I know we all want things,
Yeah.
but how do we know we're supposed to have them versus being able to listen for them? And to be able to listen for them, we have to slow down. And I personally just love quiet. The world is so noisy. There's always, even the little app notification on my phone that has a little red dot, like, got to see what that is, or at least get it out of there. At least that's my thing.
Yeah.
But that even seems like noise to me. And I think our only real job in life is to listen. But we can't do that when we're so distracted by things
Yeah.
all the time. And we get sick. And that's not okay. I mean, there's great quotes out there that we've all heard, most people die with their music still in them. That's terrible. And that's not an option for me after a long time of being distracted myself and a lot of self-work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I refuse to live like that
Yeah.
anymore.
And so I know you've talked about getting that quiet time for you. Do you have any other tools that you use to try to stay intentional throughout the day?
I do. I begin my day with 5 minutes, and I literally set my alarm and even peek out there like, okay, 30 seconds left, but I have an ice cold shower that brings
For
you
5
into right
minutes?
now for 5 minutes.
Holy
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
I'm like
Nope.
10 seconds.
Well, I started off with a minute, and then I was like, well, I'm in here already, but it's amazing what it does
Like
for
actually
you.
in the water, like standing, not just standing in the shower with the water being cold, but like.
Yeah, I'm not around the side. I wouldn't be telling the story if I was just creeping up against the wall. But yeah, the whole time. And you get more used to it, but your body, we're meant to be hungry from time
Yeah.
to time. We're meant to be cold from time to time, so your body can do natural things to warm itself up.
Yeah.
When that happens, it helps deplete depression. I mean, you have natural, your body is using itself to warm itself up, so it helps with everything emotional, and you're really damn awake. If
Yeah.
I could say the word
Yeah,
damn
yeah.
on here. I mean, there's no, and we all, I look, one of my intentional moments is staring at my dog, or in the morning if I wake up early, I like putting my hand by his nose and feeling him breathing. And I love my dogs because humans are all trying to read books and figure out how to get to right now when they just naturally live it.
Yeah.
When you're in that cold shower, you are in right now. You feel nothing else, or you can't think of anything. And
So who knew that the invention of the hot water heater would be the demise of
humanity.
Who
It's
knew?
all going downhill. from
Seriously.
that damn water
Seriously.
heater.
How about you, Theresa? What are some tools that you use?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think for me, knowing my values and priorities has been huge. Actually taking the time to really say, what are my values and priorities? And having a list that I review every morning.
Nice.
It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, the choices I make today are going to be based on these. And like you said earlier, I have way too many choices in my day pretty routinely. So being able to do that. And I think also just really thinking about what matters throughout the day, because we have so much coming at us.
And what truly matters.
Right.
Right? And I think that was for me, I know my family matters, right? It's really easy to say that. I know that my work and what I'm doing with Growing Out of Darkness matters.
Right.
But I think for us to truly sit down and maybe even with our loved ones to try to identify within that what matters most, you know? And are we really focusing our attention to achieve that? Because I think oftentimes we have the idea that we are and that we're going to. Later, we're going to sit down together as a family and we're going to play Clue or we're going to do something.
Right.
But then we don't do it. It's so easy to get distracted, and so I love that. I recently was feeling overwhelmed by life, and I'm terrible with planners and whatnot, and so I ended up I meant to bring it with me, but I have this tiny little like yellow notepad, and at the top I wrote my husband calls me Jay, J-E-Y, just to be clear, Jay's Get It Done list. And I literally write out everything that I think I need to do. And I know some people are like, well, don't write everything you need to do. And I'm like, no, I do, because that's the only way I can then focus. And it's the only way I don't feel so overwhelmed that I shut down.
Right.
And so I write it all down, and then I have boxes, and I check it off. And then afterward, like the next day, I write down everything I didn't get done plus my new things. And for me, that works. I know for some other people it might not, but that's one that really helps me. So I know we are coming to a close. We're wrapping up, but I guess give me one last final quick thought on what was your last thought on intentional living? I guess very quickly.
So much pressure.
I know. Sorry.
Jeez.
I can't even form the question. There's so much pressure. So it's on you.
It's on me. I would say that, to just fall in love with our common humanity and our flaws and welcome all of it. The Rumi poem about guest house, I just feel like applies all of the emotions, all of the life experiences. Yeah. They're all welcome.
Nice. Yeah,
thank you.
How about you, Mike? What you got?
I would say to be really intentional and careful about watching your obligations and what you think you're obligated to, who you think you're obligated to, and really pay attention to, does that serve your mental, physical, and emotional health? Do they serve your mental, physical, and emotional health? And if not, you can make other decisions no matter how long and how hard breaking apart some of the habits or relationships might be.
Yeah.
Great.
If it's true we only live once,
live
it.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. And I think my final thought is going to be something that's really hit home for me, which is, a lot of the work that I do is ultimately it's around wellness, with the idea that through wellness we will achieve suicide prevention. And after going through this crisis with my daughter, what I realized was we shouldn't just be trying to prevent suicide.
That's right.
Right? Because if that's all our energy is focused on, we're not achieving wellness, and the rate of suicide will just stay where it is. And so it's not enough to just save a life. We have to fight for a life that's worth living.
That's right.
And I think the only way you can do that is by being intentional. So I'm going to be intentional right now and encourage everyone to jump on Facebook, a tool that I don't love, but it's there, and watch this episode as many times as you want. Get us some messages, some feedback. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also visit the website at growingoutofdarkness.org to leave feedback there. You will also get information about both of our guest hosts on the website. And please tune in next time. Before we go, I want to say thank you again to our sponsors, especially Kowalski's in Shoreview, Doug Dezurek Construction, and Ever-Eve in Roseville. I also want to thank my most favorite crew here at CTV North Suburbs. Until next time, be good to yourself and to those around you.